The plain near the forest players were resting local monster hunters, and the main character, Cho Hansen, was walking next to them with a cup of coffee in his hands, but none of them suspected what was happening underground at that time. Windbirds soared into the sky with loud cries. MC stopped and realized that something was happening, and then he felt a slight shaking. He looked down at his mug. The liquid inside was shaking, and the shaking was getting stronger. With each passing second, that's when they realized that Imugi, a huge sea serpent, was approaching them. A monster jumped out from under the ground. The girl ordered the Windblade fighters to prepare for battle, and MC, along with the others, began to wait for the enemy, the oldest monster from Legends. The ground shook even more. Then a menacing roar washered. Imugi was quickly approaching them, and his appearance put a fear debuff on them. A sorceress named Kim Hana stepped forward and ordered them to calm down and prepare to fight back. Then she used her magic and easily dispelled the debuff. All of these hunters are in the Windblade. Only the best of the best are here, and Hanning is also part of this raid. Deciding to put his own strength into the fight, he pulled out a sword, and dark purple sparks danced in his other hand, and he looked at his opponent with confidence. Surprisingly, he is only level 1. He is a belatedly awakened hunter. Discovered his power about a year ago. Realizing that he needed to get closer to the enemy, he pushed off the ground and jumped high into the air, ending up right above the monster's head, and then rushed down like a bullet. And upon collision with the enemy, sparks spread in all directions, and this is only the power of a level 1 player. Butho. Did it come to this? Let's go back in time to the moment of his awakening. He was working at a construction site, and the long-awaited break came. He is years old. Just years ago he was an ordinary student, but then suddenly began as his father was hospitalized due to an incurable disease, mana deficiency. This disease appeared years ago. When the gate to another dimension opened, then the human world turned upside down. People awakened and received magical powers, but the gates to other dimensions were both a blessing and a curse for humanity. Monsters that came from another dimension caused irreversible damage to humanity. Incurable diseases, similar to mana deficiency, appeared, and the awakened players dealt with monsters for which they began to receive huge profits. After all, loot from monsters could be sold at a high price thanks to this. People who were somehow connected with the field of activity of players managed to finally accumulate a fortune, but for him the gate is only a curse. The ingredient 4th inhibitor that can alleviate the symptoms of his father's illness is a rare stone that drops from a monster, and off course one like that can't be cheap. His mother started working 2 jobs. His older sister gave him all the money Shay had saved for the wedding, but even so, it wasn't enough, and after work he had to rush straight to his part-time job. Of course, there wasn't enough money. If only he were awakened, he wouldn't have to do all this anymore. He could destroy rocks with his bare hands, jump over high-rises. It would be nice to become a player when he was done with work. He returned home, and the first thing he did was lie down on his bed. Finally relaxing, he kept thinking that everything would go well if he became a player. They say they earn an unimaginable amount of money, but no one knows how to achieve the awake thing. The power, it's some kind of lottery in which he has no chance. But despite this, he was not upset, and continued to dream about what kind of player he would be. He would not be some ordinary one, but a strong one. If people became players just because they wanted to, then probably everyone would already be them. Pulling himself together, he threw a towel over his shoulder and headed to the bathroom, but he felt something was wrong. Suddenly a light breeze appeared in the room, and a system window appeared in front of him with a message that he had awakened. This put him into a stupor, and his heart began to beat faster. They say that there are people who died of a heart attack because of a sudden lottery win, and it seems that now he understands him. Very nervous, he closed his eyes and opened the status window, hoping that there would be something cool there. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that all his characteristics were rather meager, unlike other players who usually hate points. He grabbed his head in disappointment and said that it was a miracle, of course, that he became a player, but his stats suck. And when he looked down at his skills and found out that his personal skills only included selling and buying, and he had no active or passive skills at all, he started cursing at the whole world out of despair. He fell onto a chair and stared into space. Then a tear rolled down his cheek, and he thought that even if this is a damned hero, the total number should be more than. After that he calculated the total value of his points. he only had this made him smirk and wonder had while other players had an average of points, even if he increased his overall level. He wouldn't be given 5 points to distribute among stats. He needs to rise to level 6 to be on par with ordinary level 1 players. He doesn't even have active and passive skills, which are usually given to each if a player has good skills. He will be treated like a king at a party, and getting into the ranks of the best is easy. Usually after awakening players get one of the following classes: tank, damage dealer, healer. Percent of players definitely get at least one of these. But there is also a boost. This is one of the skills that allows beginners to level up faster, but there are other players, for example Kim Hana, who awakened twice. She is one of them in the whole world. There are no more than of them in the Republic of Korea. She is the only one. There are also players who, for one reason or another, fail to level up, and although they are the owners of power, they are not much different from ordinary people, but even such players had at least some abilities. In all years he had never heard of awakened players who found themselves without skills. He became interested in his personal skill and thoughtfully clicked on it, after which he was transferred to a store where there were various goods of varying quality. He was very surprised by this and began to look at the prices. They were the same points. MC was surprised and thought that this guy was trying so hard to make everything look cheap. He realized Thathus was not the most common currency, and when he saw that he had billion accumulated points, he was very surprised. Realized that these points worked as an in-game currency. He scrolled through the list and noticed something interesting. There was a legendary quality weapon which excited him, the highest quality known to people, heroic. But here it says legendary. He clicked on the legendary quality item, but in the description there was nothing except one inscription that this is an item that cannot be purchased with a normal level. To be eligible to purchase a rare quality item, he needs more than billion accumulated points. His balance is currently at 0. He was surprised that the points he initially had do not count, and when he noticed a high quality item, his eyes widened. It occurred to him that there might be medicine in the store that could cure his father, and he scrolled through the list quickly, reading the names of the goods. Finally he saw a legendary quality elixir, usually what is called an elixirus, a panacea, but he cannot afford it. Yet he smiled and seemed to understand the meaning of his skill. He needs to take up trading. He lay down on the bed and thought that tanks are the richest of the players, and therefore set this class in the search filter. And when he saw a crystal in the list of goods that allows you to increase strength, this greatly interested him. This is a normal quality crystal that allows you to increase strength by 1 unit. It does not work on players with stats above. He started to think about whether he should buy it or not, and thought that if he didn't buy and abilities, he wouldn't be able to become a great player. He needed to think it over carefully. He ended up buying this crystal for almost 1,000,000 points, and while he was looking at it, he wondered if he could eat it. He decided to test it, and as soon as the crystal was inside him, he felt a sharp surge of strength, and all his muscles tensed opened. Then steam started coming out of his body. When he came to his senses, he clenched his hands into fists with smile, and thought that it was only 1 unit of strength, but he felt like he had been working out in the gym for a couple of years. He decided to become a little stronger with the crystals, and went to the store again to put the skill book up for sale, and started thinking about where he could place it. He also set Thepris at almost trillion points, but a system notification popped up and caught him off guard. He needs to specify Thidam. He is selling in the registration window. The commission will be % when buying. He was very upset by this, but Heckle didn't do anything about it, and decided to start over. He bought a crystal to raise his power again, and as time went by his room began to fill up with various purchases. Time passed. He went to the Players Association, and Degger at the reception asked him what brought him there, to which he told her that his powers had awakened so he could register. She was slightly surprised, and looking at him doubtfully tried to find the words, and then said that he was a little old had his powers really awakened. He didn't understand why she called him old, and she asked if he was mistaken. She had never met anyone who awakened at his age. The oldest person to awaken was years old. He still didn't understand what she was talking about, and when his gaze fell on the mirror next to him, and from this he fell to the floor and stared into space, and the association workers thought that he had dementia and surrounded him, wondering if everything was okay with him. He just sullenly looked at his wrinkled hands and realized that there is nothing free in this world. Thinking about it, He decided to open the system window and saw that he had almost a million points on his account, which were leaving every second, and with them his years returning home. He calculated how much he approximately had left to live, and this did not make him very happy. He has less than a year and a half to live, and now he needed to somehow earn a living. In the literal sense of the word. He looked at his things and decided to sell some of them, although he doubted that anyone would buy them at all. He took the game console, checked that it worked, and a system window appeared in front of him, warning about the commission. He brought the game console to the system window and then let it go, and which it appeared in the product registration window. He was very happy that he had succeeded, but before setting the price, he rubbed his beard in confusion and thought that in real life, he would have been able to get about for this console. He decided to take a chance and sell it for a higher price, setting the price at almost a million points. Although he was nervous, he began to justify his decision by saying that there were a lot of games on this game console, so the price was quite normal. He doubted whether his AD would be posted if the price was too high, but fortunately, his item was successfully put up for sale, and he was so happy that he decided to sell something else. While in another dimension, there was one of his customers. The demoness was flipping through the list of goods looking for something new and interesting. She was bored because the same thing was sold every day. Flapping her wings, she stretched and said that it was because of the competition. Sometimes everyone just plays chicken. That's how a market economy can stay afloat. A notification sound was heard. She looked up and found out that new items were put up for sale. She was very happy about this news and immediately went to the store to buy it all. Meanwhile, Heinz received a notification that his items were sold, and with it, his youth returned. Now he realized that his lifespan depended on his balance, deciding to restore all the lost points. He sold other things and began to wonder who bought all this. Meanwhile, in another dimension in the world of cultivars, there was someone who bought it. The girl was just now looking at the wristwatch she had just bought, and carefully watched how the number changed. Whether she realized that this number current time or not remains a mystery, but she really liked this thing. It was the turn of the smartphone. She turned it on, and a notification about mobile data appeared on the screen. She started to twist her smartphone in different directions with interest, and new notifications about the absence of the network appeared on the screen. But she didn't understand what it meant at all, and frowned because of it having closed all the notifications. She opened the camera and was very surprised because she saw her face on the screen and thought that it was a mirror. Having seen a line with all sorts of multicolored icons, masks, she clicked on it without thinking and fell to the floor in surprise when she saw her reflection. It's just a miracle. In the reflection, she has a hat on her head, although in reality, she doesn't have one. She turned it all off and picked up the smartphone. Looking straight into the camera, having looked at herself, she was slightly embarrassed, and then an idea came to her mind. She picked up the phone and, having made a cute face, started taking a selfie. Meanwhile, in another dimension, the demons was burning with rage. She didn't have time to buy some off the goods that Hinson put out. She started cursing the man who got ahead of her, then looked at her purchases and thought, what did she buy? But what wasn't this? For her eyes flashed. Apparently she tried to see the true essence of these things, but she saw nothing good. Expectedly, for her the game console turned on, and she froze in anticipation, and when she saw that an image appeared on the screen, she was very surprised. At first, she thought it was magic, but there was no trace of it at all. So how was this possible? Time passed, and she was completely carried away by the game console, and sweating, she poked at the buttons with effort, and at one point she froze in place, and her eyes opened wider. There was a message on the screen that the game was over. She looked at it in shock, then screamed in rage, and magic began to thicken around her. She literally went crazy because of losing the game, which was happening for the nth time. Meanwhile, MC was walking around the dump looking for things he could sell. He went to the car and opened the system window, but it told him that couldn't put other people's goods up for sale. He was a little upset by this, and went on seeing a discarded Fannerby. He scanned it with the system, and found out that it could still be sold, which surprised him a little. He took it and thought, is it because it's no one's fan and he picked it up, or is it just the system's decision? After that, he went to the store, and from there went home, and decided to sell something else, but the system set limits on sales no more than pieces at a time, and he thought it was a shame, but still, It was the beginning of his business. A new day came. Looking at his balance, he got very nervous and called himself a fool now. He only had almost $1 million on his accounts. Smiling nervously, he decided to try to do the charging with new force, since he only had days left to live, and at that moment a system notification appeared. He received complaints from a buyer who bought his product. If there are a lot of complaints and the seller's rating dropped significantly, then his activity will be suspended, so let him be careful. Such news made him nervous. He didn't even know that such a thing existed here, but now the main problem is definitely not this, so he decided to lower the price a little for now, and the system reported that the changes were successful, and then all his products were sold at one moment. He smiled nervously, and taking out of the bag Waith bought in the store, said that he thought no one would buy it. He was really surprised. He decided to sell something else, but the system again reported a buyer's complaint, and he got even more nervous. It turns out that out of purchased products have already received a complaint. Percent of the products were defective, so his activity is suspended for days. Let him solve this problem within a week. Otherwise, his goods will be considered invalid, and himself will be blocked for months. He was indignant and began to check complaints. They were unhappy with the smartphone because it was only enough for hours of active use. There was also a complaint about a wristwatch that was charged by the sun. He read all this in confusion and said that all these things were working. It was just that the batteries were dead. He checked other complaints too, about cigarettes, a lighter soju, and beer. Apparently the inhabitants of another dimension became so dependent on these products that they could not stand it any longer. And the refer began to send complaints to the seller with insults and requests to put up new goods. Complaints came every second. He did not even have time to read them. At one point he could not stand it and exclaimed with displeasure, "Do they think that everyone has a title in speed reading? Let them. Give him at least a little time." He remembered what the system told him and took a notebook, starting to write everything down from today. His activity is suspended 4 days, so he needs to sort out the complaints within a week, otherwise he will be banned for months to begin. He will need to put the old phone up for sale again, but this time with a charger. It seems that the clients are the same as him, players with unique abilities. It seems that those who bought electronic items are not from Earth or maybe they are aliens with poorly developed technologies. After realizing what was going on, he got excited and opened a second-hand website to buy some items at low prices, but he didn't have enough money. After seeing the notification, he jumped up from his chair and felt his pockets. There were only a few coins inside. He sat down on his bed in frustration and started thinking about what to do. Maybe he should sell the skill book, and he still can register as a player because he's gotten old. An idea came to his mind, and he took out his phones and started searching for something. After a while, he was already sitting on a chair and nervously waiting for news. After hearing the sound of notifications from his phone, he immediately checked it and, taking his jacket, went about his business. When he arrived at work, all eyes were focused only on him, especially on his muscles. Heckled easily lift heavy bags and carry them on his shoulders, and his colleagues noticed that he was really strong and asked where he had worked before. He answered them with a smile that he worked a little bit everywhere. 3 days passed like this. He bought new goods for resale, and the system informed him that he would be unbanned. In seconds, looking at this notification, he smiled and took the things out of the box, and as soon as the ban was lifted, he decided to immediately put them up for sale. But what was his surprise and indignation when he received another complaint. Notifications continued to come, which is why he broke out in a cold sweat and began to get very nervous. A few seconds later, the system informed him that a complaint had been received for out of goods. Percent of the goods were defective. His activity was suspended for days. He was given days to resolve this problem, otherwise all his goods would be considered invalid, and the seller would be blocked for months. He was very surprised by this news, and began to get indignant, because he did not understand what was wrong. He decided to read the complaints. This time there was a dimness on the list of angry buyers. Apparently she was playing games all the time, and the console ran out of battery. So she got really mad, and sent this complaint with a bunch of insults and threats. He sighed, heavily realizing his mistake, and then he didn't think about the batteries. All of his products received complaints that didn't describe a specific problem, but only threats and demands to put something new up for sale. He got really mad and exclaimed, "Why are they being rude to him? right away, let them wait a little. He was already ready to upload new products. He leaned back in his chair tiredly and thought that he had gotten a day ban again. If he didn't sort out these problems in days, he would be banned. Gritting his teeth, he cursed loudly and then went back to the construction site where everyone praised him for the extra work. Days later he received his payment for the work and also bought several new products. Sitting down on the chair, he looked at the system window with confusion and thought that the person who was buying up all his trash just to throw him in the ban would definitely buy this too. These batteries would work for game consoles too, but the question was how long they would last. Finally he was unbanned and immediately started posting items for sale, and the system reported that all his ads had been posted. A few seconds later, new notifications appeared. Complaints about his items were resolved, which he couldn't help but be happy about. Now he had about 2 billion points in his account. He smiled broadly and then clenched his fist in joy and exclaimed that this is the power of money. What should he sell next? A game console or an old phone? He had an idea. He had become younger. He could now register with the association. To get a player's ID, you need to go through a week training at the training center. You can return to the training as many times as you like until you manage to pass the exam. If you have already displayed and failed the exam, then it is not a problem. You will simply be without a certificate, which means you will not be considered a player, so awakening is only the beginning of becoming a player. Tests included theory and practice, and in the latter, Hinson really stood out. The instructor clapped his hands rejoicing at his success, and one of the students said that he was so proud of his abilities, but isn't he taking on too much? Then a girl from his group stood up for the MC and exclaimed with displeasure, "Who does he think he is acting like this because he has some rare skill?" The guy responded by telling her that it was true, and Hansen smiled dryly, saying that he had been showing off like this from the beginning. Weeks passed, the training was over, and the Muk went out into the street with his group. He was called out by a girl who stood up for him and offered him to go with them and celebrate the end of training. Even the guy who didn't like him offered him to join, but he refused, citing household chores, and left thinking that they would never meet again anyway. They were a little upset that he wouldn't go with them because he had good abilities. The next day, he went to the association and a smiling girl asked him to provide his documents, and when the registration was over, he proudly looked at his player ID. He remembered the skill book and thought that now he would finally be able to sell it. Maybe he would even be able to pay all his father's bills through hunting. The first thing he did was go Toothhorned Rabbit Dungeon and rented equipment. They're paying a pretty penny. The man in the store smiled and told him to come again, but if he was late with the return, he would be obliged to pay extra, and so impoverished. Hinson got upset and answered him that he understood everything, after which he tried on the equipment and thought that all his savings were enough only for the cheapest armor and a sword. If the equipment is weak, then he will not even be able to enter the dungeon, and even for staying there he has to pay. He went out to the main square. Players were looking for tanks and healers for their team, luring them with rather tempting offers such as paying for the rent of the dungeon and a guarantee of safety. Looking around, MC thought with delight that even in low-level dungeons there is a high demand for tanks and healers. He paid attention to the sign with information about the dungeon the optimal player level is from. Told how he understood that the chances of dying here are not great, it is still worth playing it safe. Opening the system window, he checked his stats. His strength, endurance, and agility were all at, and his intelligence and magic were at no. His active skills were strength, fireball, and 5 others. His passive skills were body enhancement and furthers. He smiled and thought that, with his current skills, he could join any team, but he wouldn't. Today's goal was to catch the boss. Alone, he pretended to have already obtained all the skills from the skill mastery books. He had Dedoward, the dungeon, and the man at the entrance asked if he had a partner. He told him that he would go alone, and Renento, the dungeon, thinking that he must think he was just some idiot trying to clear the dungeon alone. Even higher-ranking players rarely go alone. Monster hunting is usually a group activity after all. Reality is different from the game. One mistake can take your life or ruin it forever. That's why it's important to find a partner you can rely on if something happens. One of the dungeon guards approached the man who let him in and asked if he would let him go alone. He told him that sometimes people need to be allowed to knock their arrogance down themselves, and in the meantime Hansen froze at the entrance to the dungeon, collecting his thoughts. Taking a step, he found himself on the other side, in a huge torch-lit cave. He didn't even have time to look around, as a loud sound came from the side near us, a group of hunters who were trying to get close. To a horned rabbit, this monster immediately instilled fear in him, and he thought that it was not a rabbit but some kind of predator. Looking at the horns and sharp teeth of this monster, he decided not to engage in battle, and first look, and at that moment one of the players used the provocation skill, and the rabbit immediately pounced on him. They were waiting for this. The tank held the monster back with his shield. After a few seconds he realized that the enemy was much stronger than him, and did not hold the shield high. Seng, who was watching them, was surprised, and one of them